Previously, we have discussed how Pathfinder 2nd Edition lets the players choose their own design when it comes to the action budget and when it comes to the risk profile, the risk of having a null turn. In this video, we will talk about how it does the same with attrition and resource expenditure. And this may be the topic that's most obvious to people, especially those who have played previous editions of Pathfinder and Dungeons & Dragons. Yes, everyone knows that marshals get at-will abilities and strikes, and the casters get daily spell slots. But of course, it's more convoluted, complicated, granular, let's go with granular, than just that. And this specific type of choose your own design or resource expenditure poses a significant problem to GMs that we will get to. Hey everyone, Utkarsh from Spirit Bell Games here. In this video, we will talk about the choose your own design for resource expenditure, and in the Patreon Extended Edition, I will be taking that lens to every single class and breaking it down on how I see each class behave. Some of them, like Bard, were especially surprising to me when I did their design evaluation, so check out the free Patreon video for the per class breakdown. Anyway, before we get to resource expenditure, you may ask, why do I use a grandiose term like choosing your own design? Isn't all of this just basic customizability? Isn't it just class selection? And I had that thought as well at the start, especially coming from Dungeons & Dragons. If you played 5th edition or 3rd edition, you know that the resource expenditure profile is just class selection. But in this day and age, when D&D 4th edition and successors like Drawsteel are becoming more popular, now we can see that, okay, there actually is a whole other school of thought that says that all these 3 points, action budgets, the risk of null turn, and resource expenditure, can be pre-designed by the designers and be in perfect parity for all classes. And so when we contrast Pathfinder 2nd Edition to that type of game, we see that, yes, actually, this selection between the marshal or the caster or whatever plethora of options that 2E has, that is actually a different school of thought. It does put the choice in the hands of players, just like 5th edition did. So, yes, kind of like 5th edition and other editions, Pathfinder 2e does have the martial and caster divide, but it also doesn't break down into these neat symmetric categories. In Pathfinder 2nd edition, similar but more granular. On the one hand, you have the high accuracy marshals, gunslingers, and fighters, which for the most part just get at-will abilities and nothing else. Actually, except for the spell shot gunslinger, it's entirely at-will. And then on the far side, you have casters that rely heavily on their spell slots. So we're talking wizards, sorcerers, and oracles. And these are the daily resource users, the canonical daily resource users. But in the middle, you have a whole mess of mixes of per encounter abilities with daily abilities with at-will abilities. And it doesn't form neat categories or containers. Even if we only look at focus spells and ignore things like unstable or per rage abilities or the cooldown on healing impulses, even if you just look at focus spells, each class's focus spells have wildly different power, to the point where only the animist and the psychic can be said to have focus points that are the core of the class. And so that leads us to this design space, this offerings, where you can't easily compare one per encounter ability to another. Okay, on the one hand, this is complicating the discussion where we can't compare them easily, and then that also leads to it making it difficult for the player to figure out that if they do want a particular resource expenditure profile, what would be their best option. They can see that sorcerers also get focus spells and animists also get focus spells, Does that mean either class could be played at a per encounter level? No. The animists can be built for per encounter profile, whereas a sorcerer is not getting the kind of focus spells that would be needed to carry an encounter, with the possible exception of the level 10 elemental sorcerer spell, which is quite good. So already on the player side, there is confusion. And I hope that just by going over the per class breakdown, I can help resolve this confusion. But I expect that other people will have different opinions than what I have, or some of the more interesting class resource profiles. But that's just the confusion on the player side. On the GM side, this aspect of the system where they put the resource design in the hands of the players, this creates significant amount of confusion on how the GM or the adventure writer should create their adventuring day. Is the GM allowed to have back-to-back encounters without a 10-minute rest? Can an adventure run hex crawls where you can expect at most one major encounter per day and still have those encounters be threatening? Or will they be overwhelmed by the number of heal spells in a cleric's divine font? Now, this is its own topic, the whole issue of Pathfinder's confused adventuring day, that I'll talk about in a different video. But before ending this video, I want to give GMs and players some specific advice. On the GM side, try to be as transparent as possible on what type of adventure you are planning on running, and especially on what type of adventuring day the players can expect. Is it going to be a hex crawl where they can expect at most one major encounter per day? Or is it going to be a dungeon crawl where it's entirely up to the players to decide how deep they go and when they want to take a break? Or is it going to be a more heroic narrative where the GM has full control over when encounters happen? On the player side, I recommend, before building your character or choosing your class even, to just briefly have a discussion with the group on what kind of resource profile they want the group to have. Is the group okay with having a mixed profile so that the at-will marshals can carry the adventurers throughout the longer days when there are multiple battles, while the clerics with their divine font and sorcerers with their blasts can carry the party through the more difficult encounters? Or do you want to err more on the per encounter side, where you can just keep going with per encounter healing, but not be as bursty? Or do you want to be more bursty, such as if you're playing a hex crawl, or if you're playing in Pathfinder Society? Just a tangent on Pathfinder Society, it tends to not have more than 2 encounters between rests, I've seen. So I recommend that, well, actually, in Pathfinder Society, you can pretty much play any resource profile. If you want to play casters, you'll see that you have the ability to expend spell slots freely, and then if you want to play marshals, they'll be quite useful as well. So anyway, this is the end of the trilogy on choosing your own design. Talked about choosing your own action budget, choosing your own risk profile, and now choosing your own attrition. Just talking about these 3 things has raised a few other related points that I will likely cover in the next few upcoming videos. Do go check out the Patreon Extended Edition for the per class breakdown of the resource profiles. For now, this is me signing off, wishing you all engaging games.